The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. Welcome. We're here on a Thursday morning live coming to you from the Warner Center in Woodland Hills, California. Thrilled to be here on this Thursday morning. Got a big show planned for you and a lot of things going on. But before we do anything else, I want to remind you that this entire show, we're going to be with you live for the next 2 hours. The entire show is meant to be interactive. We want to hear from you. We want to know your thoughts, your feelings, your concerns, your questions. You know, if you just need to pop off, sometimes you just need to pop off and have something to say. There's lots of different ways that you can participate with us and have your voice be heard and be a part of the conversation, which I don't know about you. I feel a need to be a part of a conversation about autism. So you can do that right here with us and Samantha, and it's free. And Samantha's going to show you some of the different ways that you can do that while she's showing. And by the way, there's new places too, which is really exciting. I'm going to talk about that in a second. But while she's showing that to you, I want to remind you our homepage is autism-live.com. When you go there, lots of things to do. If you want to watch the show, all you have to do is click on the triangle that's on the computer screen, and that'll start the show playing. If you want to go back in time, you can look at the 100 most recent episodes by clicking on the little memo tab that's in the upper left-hand corner. If you look to the side of the computer screen and you see that there's a series of white boxes, if you put your cursor in the one that says your questions, all you have to do is type and hit enter. You don't have to log in. You don't have to have a username, a password, a credit card. It's free and it's anonymous. And there's lots of ways, as you're seeing, there's lots of different ways to communicate with us. But I will say that the homepage and the live feature on the homepage, the fun thing about that is that you get to be completely anonymous. We're now, as of yesterday, we're live on Twitter and Periscope. So our Twitter and Periscope viewers, hello, I'm waving at you. Please wave back. Please write in and tell us that you're watching. We love to hear from you guys. Let us know how you're watching us, which is a really fun thing. But the live feature is fun because you can ask anything and even I don't know who you are, right? It's total anonymity. If you write something in on Facebook Live, then your friends and family see that you wrote something in on Facebook Live, and there's nothing wrong with that. But sometimes you want to ask a question and you might feel like, I don't want anybody to know that I'm asking this question. Well, our home page has that live feature that allows you to do that, and then and if you want to, on that page, you can put personal information. I just won't share the question on the screen. I have the ability to share this question or not. And a lot of times I don't, just on the off chance that, it can identify somebody. But in any case, we're thrilled to be here with you. We got a big show coming for you. And a couple of business keeping things I want to do. First of all, I want to remind you, yesterday we had a guest on the show from Conveyed Car Seats, and also Conveyed has partnered together with R82. They're one company now. So they carry a line of amazing assistive tools, things like wheelchairs and things like that. But yesterday we had them on to talk about the Scallop. This is this cool little, you see Samantha's got the graphic up there. Cool thing. And we're having a contest right now because R82 and Conveyed have given us the ability to give one viewer a Scallop. So what we're asking you to do over this, we started this yesterday and it runs for a week. You can write into us at autismlive@gmail.com. And when you do, write in and say, I want the Scallop, All right, that's all you have to say, and then give us your address, because whoever does win it, we're going to need to ship it to you. Once you do that, we'll collect all of those across the next week, and we'll put them into a fishbowl, and we will select one at random, totally at random. So while we appreciate your long letters of passion, desire to have a scallop, you don't need to do that. You just say, I want a scallop, and we're going to pick one at random, and we'll announce that a week from today on that show. But also we have some growth charts that we can send to those, some of you. We don't have enough for everybody, obviously, but so we'll pick some more names, and we'll pick some people to get a growth chart from Convey. They're lovely, that you can stick up on the wall and be able to measure your kids so that you don't have to mark it with a pen on the wall, and it's really nice material. It's a really cool thing. So Convey, and this, I gotta say, I love me this scallop, right? This has a lot of different applications. It's not just for people who are on the autism spectrum or who have any kind of challenge at all. Anybody can use this. They were saying yesterday that people have these and take them so that they can sit, when you have to sit on bleachers or something, like at a football game or you go to a concert. I love to go to the Hollywood Bowl, but I don't pay for the expensive seats down in the front, and you're sitting on benches, right? And sometimes for some people, not being able to sit back and hold yourself up, it's not as comfortable. And these are super duper comfortable. They come in 4 different sizes so that it goes up to a max weight of 154 pounds. And when you lean into them, it kind of hugs you. So it's a pretty fabulous thing, and great for our kiddos who are on the autism spectrum, especially the little ones. When we're wanting to get them to do circle time, it can be hard, right? And so this is awesome. They've already taken these into classrooms, and the kids love them. They kind of fold up into, it looks like a tote bag, and you can put things in it, and the kids like to take it from center to center. It's a really cool thing. So it is called the Scallop. Write to us at autismlive@gmail.com right now and say, I want the Scallop, because they're really cool. Love them. And they come in the different colors, and they're reversible. So it's all fabulous. Anyway, we also have got an amazing show that's coming up for you, but I always like to remind you at the start of the show that we have lots of experts that are on the show, and that's a wonderful thing, and it's always my privilege to be able to bring you experts, but I don't want you to confuse me as being one of the experts. That's all I ask of you. I am a very proud autism mama, and I'm a former teacher, and I'm somebody who cares deeply about what happens in our autism community. I consider myself a part of the autism community, and I welcome everyone in the larger sense of the autism community, which is parents, teachers, practitioners, people who are on the spectrum, and people who love people who are on the spectrum. That's all of us, right? We are on a mission to make sure that individuals with autism get the respect and the resources that they need that are right for them. It's not a one-size-fits-all community, but that's the mission that we're on. So don't confuse me with being an expert, but do confuse me with being somebody who cares deeply. And you know what I always say, together we get through this. Si se puede. We can do this. All right. We like to start the day on Thursday with something we fondly refer to as the jargon of the day. This is when we take on one word, one phrase, one acronym, and we try to figure out, what are they talking about? What does it mean? And what does it have to do with me? And why do I have to care, right? Because I don't know about you, if it's not saving me time and it's not saving me money, I don't really have time. Right? Especially when my son was in his early intervention, I don't have time. Like, just tell it to me like it is and tell me what you want me to do, because I don't have time. But what I learned over the years is that when we learn these jargon terms, they really can help us. And I can pick them myself. We always give you the actual definition, and a lot of times I like to make fun of it because sometimes it's indecipherable, unless you already have a PhD in psychology, and a lot of us don't. I don't know about you. I don't have a PhD in psychology. And then we give you a working definition, something that makes the PhDs in psychology break out into hives, but that helps us to understand, what does this term mean and why are we even talking about it? So today's jargon term is executive functions. Now, doesn't this sound like when in a business all the executives go to like a party? They have a little cocktail party? Yeah, that's not what we're talking about. But okay, so let's take a look at our actual definition. Executive functions, it's a set of cognitive abilities, okay, that control and regulate other abilities and behaviors in order to successfully achieve goals. Okay, well, as definitions go, this isn't horrible, right? I still don't know exactly what it means because it's a little, airy-fairy for me. Well, cognitive abilities. So which cognitive abilities are we talking about? And it helps us to control and regulate other abilities and behaviors. Well, which ones are we talking about? But I love the part about being able to successfully achieve goals, because don't we all want that for ourselves? And don't we all want that for our kids? Okay, moving on to our working definition. Executive functions are skills involved in goal-directed behaviors such as memory, attention, planning, self-awareness, and problem solving. Okay, I'm getting a little bit closer there, but one of the explanations that I'll tell you, when I was trying to figure out what executive functions were, because this is something that I would hear people talk about all the time. Well, executive functions. Well, he's not able to do that because that's an executive functions thing, right? And I have now crossed over into the dark side. I'm one of those people. But I'm worse. I say, oh, it's an EF thing. Oh, it's just an EF thing. And people are like, it's a what thing? It's an EF thing. Because when you aren't able to do something, sometimes it's because you don't have the skill to do it. And other times it's an EF thing, which is a skill. I get it. See, I've crossed over into the dark side, but let me help you with this. And the person who, I have to give credit where credit is due, the person, because I went to a whole bunch of different people and said, explain executive functions to me. And I remember Dr. Jonathan Tarbox, took out a marker and he drew things all over a window. And I was like, yeah, still don't get it. But Dr. Adele Nadowski sat me down and she was like, okay, let's think about this. And if you wanted to go to a conference, let's say that you looked and you saw online that there was a conference coming up and you said, ooh, I want to go there. What would you have to do to be able to go to the conference? And I was like, well, I'd have to buy tickets and go. And she was like, yeah, but there's a lot more to it, right? You would have to remember to buy the tickets. You would have to remember where you put the tickets. You would have to remember to put the tickets in your purse. You would have to make arrangements for somebody to watch your son while you went to the conference. You'd probably have to plan, and you'd have to have a budget that allowed you to have the money to be able to go to the conference. You'd have to pick out which outfit, or if you were going for a couple of days, you'd have to pick out a couple of outfits. You might have to take something to the cleaners. You might have to do laundry. You might have to buy something, like you have to find where the suitcase is. You got to pack the toiletries. Or if you're just driving to it for the day, maybe you have to pack a lunch, or you have to make sure that you have your credit card, or you have money in your purse. You have to, and she said, and there's things all along the way that can sink your battleship, right? Because you say, I want to go to the conference, but what happens if the phone rings as you're leaving to go to the conference? And it's important that you be on time, but the phone rings and you're standing there and you go answer the phone. Well, that's an EF thing, because being able to say, I don't have time to answer the phone right now, I need to be in the car or I'm going to be late, is an executive function skill. You see how it all starts to like, oh man, okay, that's, and you start to go, oh, I'm late a lot. How does that happen? And you start to identify. And then further, she said to me, so you get into the car and you're going to go to the conference, but you discover that you didn't put gas in the car the night before. And as she was saying all this stuff to me, I was like, oh, I think I have EF problems. And one of the examples she used was that every morning when she would take her kids to drop them off to school, she would see one mom in near hysteria, dragging one child, pushing another child in a stroller, because she was late, running and, red in the face and huffing and puffing, and would get there often, and she would see her as she was pulling away, having dropped her kids off on time, and see this poor woman who every morning it was this hysteria of, I'm not going to be there on time. And we've all been there, right? I was there, the last 2 days. Not today, because if we will stop and say to ourselves, okay, where are the executive functions falling apart? Like, where did this, we had this goal, whether it was to go to the conference or to get the kids to school on time, or, to do something, where did it fall apart? And that it's this massive undertaking to get anybody to go anywhere. If you really stopped and thought about everything that it takes to get your kids to school on time and did a spreadsheet on it, or just did a task analysis, you'd see that it's like so many things that you got to do to get them on time. And there's so many opportunities to fall apart, right? Well, our whole lives are this way. That if we really want to accomplish something, we have to have a host of skills and be able to put them together so that we can actually get there. Because at some point, when you have a goal that you want and you say, okay, by this and so date, I want to do X, Y, and Z, you start on this path and then you meet some kind of conflict always, right? And the ability to resolve conflict, to be able to recognize it, to see what it is, prioritize, and say what's important to me here, and then problem solve, that's all executive functions too. So if you think about our kids in school, right? And what does a kindergarten student need to do executive functions wise, right? Well, there are things that they need to do in order to achieve their goal, which is to graduate from kindergarten, right? Or to be able to get through the day, whatever. But as the kids grow, the executive functions portion of school gets bigger and bigger and bigger, right? They start having, the teacher doesn't go around and collect the paper from them. They have to turn the paper in. Now in high school, they just, they submit it online. Oh my goodness, right? So for all of us, there are business owners who go for coaching on executive functions, because if you could have everything right, but if there's one little step in the process where you blew it, the whole thing starts to unravel. And I don't know anything that describes some of our kids on the autism spectrum better than that. Even just being able to set up a play date with a friend that they can do, there's 100 steps to it and they can do 99 of them perfect, but get one of them a little tangled up and suddenly the play date isn't happening, right? So executive functions is something we all could get better at. Your whole life, if you think about like what's tearing your ticket, what isn't working. Listen, I was there this morning. I was like, I cannot do another morning like I've done the last 2 mornings where we left earlier and earlier and still, I had traffic in the way. So what am I going to do to get my kid there on time? And I went, stop panicking about it. Think like a behaviorist, Shannon. What's in the way of getting us out the door? Well, I've made him this huge breakfast and he's taking forever to read it, probably because he's on the phone playing a game while he's doing it, right? Oh, and I'm running out of time, she's telling me. I've gone on too much. In any case, I was able to look at it this morning and say, try something different. Make him a smaller breakfast and offer to pack more to go in the car if he puts his phone down and finishes getting ready. Guess what? He was at school at time. It's just thinking like a behaviorist and looking at the executive functions, taking ownership of it and going, where is this unraveling? So executive functions, it's great for us, but it's really great for our kids as well. All right, moving on, because we got a big show coming up. Question of the day. We like to ask you a question and you guys can write into us on any of the platforms that we have, but here it is. What helps you to calm down? We're going to be talking about this a lot today. But what helps you? And let's see what happens. For me, it all comes from the breath, and sometimes I don't remember to do that. But that's because I haven't done what our topic of the week is, which is the topic of today's show. The overriding topic is setting priorities. And that, my friends, is an executive function skill. Because in that moment that I was describing where it's time to leave to go to the conference and you have to go now and the phone rings and you have to be able to stand there and go, I really want to answer the phone, but I really need to be on time to this. What's more important right now? And make a decision, right? When we set priorities, we're able to focus better and it helps us to get to goals better. So setting priorities is a super duper aspect. And we need to teach that to ourselves and we need to teach that to our kids, right? Helps us to get to the goals. So on today's show, a couple of things that we have coming up in just a minute. We have been talking about mindfulness, and we've been talking about autism in the classroom, and sometimes we've talked about mindfulness in the classroom and some of the studies behind it. Well, I thought, enough. We got to bring the people who are behind these studies. So we're going to have Jai Luster is going to be with us talking about Calm Classroom. And this is amazing. I'm so excited. I'm all a Twitter about it. Then a little bit later on, now normally we have Bonnie Yates, and Bonnie isn't here with us this week. She needed to be out of town. We'll have her back next week. But I'm going to get a little bit of opportunity to answer some of the questions that you guys have been writing in and that are writing in now. Feel free to write in. But we are also going to be talking extensively today about a talk that I was asked to give, and then I gave it this last Saturday in Bakersfield, and somebody suggested, why haven't you done that on the show? So I'm going to be taking on the subject of how to make a child with ASD happy. And hopefully you'll want to stick around for that. Plus we have our mindfulness moment in addition to Calm Classroom, and our Autism in the Classroom moment. All of that plus your questions coming up in just a few minutes. We're going to take a break right now, and as we do, we're going to unveil the newest episode of Christina Adams' Autism and Beyond. And when we come back, fingers crossed via Skype, we're going to have Jai Luster here with us talking about Calm Classroom. Stick with us.
Life-threatening aspects of autism. Unfortunately, autism can be a life-threatening condition. There are things that are associated with it that parents need to know about. First of all, there's the risk of seizure. It's heightened in people with autism. There's also the risk of what they call elopement, which means basically running away. Elopement can lead to things like exposure, drowning if they get near bodies of water, and maybe being hit by cars. Being hit by cars is certainly something that seems to be emerging as a problem in people with autism. So what do? We have to take certain steps to keep them safe to start. That means at home. Let's look around the home first. Where are your points of entry? Barriers, doors, windows, access to bodies of water, gates, fences. You have to look at school, because people with autism can sometimes elope from school or things like that, daycare. So you have to make sure that it is written into their plan, wherever they are, that people are going to be responsible. That may include a tracking device. For some people with autism or Asperger's, a tracking device might be useful. It might help people know where they are, so in case someone has taken them a place that they shouldn't be taken, kind of tricked them. Sometimes you get that happening with your teenagers, or they're just a child that's unable to communicate or speak very well, and you need to know where they are. Consider that. There's a new generation of tracking devices. It can go in their shoe, can go in their jean, maybe in a cell phone. And I would also add that one of the most life-threatening aspects of autism is sadly being bullied, socially excluded, things like that. That's always happening in people with autism spectrum disorder. People bully them, exclude them. The risk of suicide is unfortunately very high. So do not be afraid to probe, ask uncomfortable questions, see what's happening. Even if they don't tell you, you need to ask other people at school what they know, what they've seen. Even though it's an uncomfortable thing, we do need to be aware that this is a very dangerous situation at times. Be very, very vigilant. Stay upbeat, be positive, and realize no one person and no one family can keep a child with autism safe all by themselves. Get the support you need, look around, be vigilant. It's better to take steps you feel that you don't need too soon than too late.
Hi guys, for the month of August, I figured we'd do some fun in the sun activity. We're gonna make our very own frozen bowling game. It's super fast and super easy. I was inspired by some lessons I saw in Skills. All right, so let's get to it. The materials you'll be needing are water, water bottles, balloon, and food coloring, which is always optional. First step you're gonna do is make your bowling ball, since it'll have to freeze overnight. The first thing I'm going to do is take my balloon and put a few drops of food coloring in it. This is optional. If you don't have food coloring or your child has an allergy to it, don't use it, but I thought it'd be fun to make everything super colorful. So, I have my food coloring. I'm going to put a few drops in here. And then, take it to the sink and fill it up with water and tie it a knot. Here's my balloon filled with water and the food coloring. I'm going to take this and place it in the freezer with some towels just so it holds its shape better. Our next step is to make the bowling pins. I have 10 recycled water bottles that I've refilled with water. Now I'm going to put some food coloring in them.
Straight to the center at full speed. Light will surround you in a blink of an eye.
Now that my bowling ball is frozen and my pins have been filled with water, let's go outside and play with these.
See all the colors in the sky tonight. It's time to let the sunshine hide.
I hope you and your family have fun with the frozen bowling game like I did with my friend Emily. Well, until next time, craft on, guys. Bye.
Can you see me flying by your side?
Welcome back to Autism Live. We are having some technical difficulties with Skype, so we expect that Jai Lester will be joining us in just a few minutes. Until then, I wanted to take a couple of minutes to talk about some viewer mail that we had gotten in the last week. A mom had written in and asked us to ask all of you if anybody had had the experience of having their child on the spectrum become so agitated that police had to be called. And so she's asking for some support from those of you who have had that experience to write in and talk specifically about that. She had some concerns about her son seems to, and this is an adult son now, who is having some agitation and doesn't realize his own strength sometimes and doesn't realize the consequences of his behaviors and can sometimes become either close to violent or have a moment of an outburst of violence. And I'm couching it very carefully in terms because this is a really sensitive subject when we're talking about our kids. And I did talk to a couple of experts that I know about this because Mom was saying, what do you think about the idea of us taking him to tour a police station to see what could happen if he were ever arrested? Because maybe that would be enough to prevent him from doing the behavior. So I reached out to a couple of experts and said, what are your thoughts and feelings about this? And because the age of this person is already adult, they expressed trepidation and said, while there's a possibility that that might work, not knowing the child that it's too risky, that it could easily backfire, that it could cause behavior, and then you're down a hole. So I thought since this subject came up, and I really want to put this out to all of you to write in, and you can write it on any of the formats that we have, and talk to this mom about what it was like if you've ever had to have the police called. I did also want to do a side topic about this that goes hand in hand with it, because two different things. First of all, when our kids are at an age where there is the potential for police to be involved. By the way, we had another mom who wrote in the other day and said, after our discussion about classroom and making sure that we're protective of our kids, that her child, that I believe she said was in 3rd grade, had been handcuffed this week in class because he wouldn't obey an order, and it got to the point where security was called and they handcuffed a 3rd grader. I want to say that it's so super important that we front load our kids with how to behave when police are there. Because at some point they're going to be there when police are there for whatever reason, and we really need to make it clear to all of our kids, regardless of their skill abilities, to understand and respect the authority that comes with police and how to be safe when things are happening, because we've seen all too often that there can be mistakes that happen. We have seen in the last year that there have been mistakes when police have been called because there is an incident happening with a person who's on the autism spectrum who is agitated, and police are called and they aren't always properly trained on what to do in that moment. And sometimes it has resulted in the loss of life for the person who is on the autism spectrum. So I really wholeheartedly want to recommend to everyone who's watching, regardless of if your child has ever exhibited any behavior that you think would warrant calling the police, please make sure that you go onto Facebook and find Be Safe the Movie. Emily Island made that movie with a group of people who are on the autism spectrum. Joey Travolta was involved in it, and all of his students helped to make the production of that video. And I love it because it shows scenarios, and it shows it from all the different points of perspective. And we're going to be talking about perspective taking in a little while. But so it will show an incident, and it shows what happened at the police station, what happened in the police car, what happened at the scene of the crime, and what happens with the kid with autism who has nothing to do with any of that but gets caught up into it. And that suddenly this kid on the spectrum who fits the description of something that happened is there on the sidewalk with police with guns drawn. And it shows exactly what he needs to do, even though he knows that he's not guilty. I cannot stress enough how important it is that you at least watch this video with your child who's on the autism spectrum and have conversations about it. And then after you've had conversations about it, then it might be a good time with support to visit a police station. And in fact, I really recommend that you have Emily Island or somebody who is specifically trained do a workshop with your local police where your child of whatever age, whatever ability gets to meet the police. And that there is a conversation and a workshop about getting to know each other so that they recognize each other, so that if a police car has to come to your house at some point, everybody has a little bit more knowledge about what's going to happen, okay? Now, having said that, and so that's Be Safe the Movie. And by the way, Emily Island now comes and does these workshops at police stations with her adult son who's on the autism spectrum. My gosh, it doesn't get any better than that, ladies and gentlemen. And it's, very low cost, and often a grant from the community will cover it because the police get trained as well. So ask about it, or ask to have a screening with the police for Be Safe the Movie. Okay, but on the other side of it, I do want to say that where violence is concerned and where people have the potential to get hurt, how important it is to get an assaultive behavior management person working with you. If you cannot find that, I mean, there's lots of ways to find this and ask and request for this, but I can tell you that CARD has assaultive behavior managers that are able to work on cases. So if you are not able to find it with your provider, if you're not able to find it with your funding source, know that you can find it with CARD. And if you have insurance and they're not going to pay for it, it is a part of behavior management. Ask for them to fund for CARD to work with you on that. And CARD is all over the United States now, and they can do telehealth as well. But it's not the kind of thing that we can just sit back and wait, right? If there's anything that is making you fearful, or that there has been assaultive behavior towards anyone, even if it was just threatened, you need to act as quickly as possible and get help and support, because we can't allow that to be reinforced and to be fed, because it will just get worse. And then there will be the police, and then bad things happen at that point. So there is fear in my heart. I know that there are solutions. I've seen it in many, many cases. And I want to urge you to get to that as quickly as you can. Okay, and thank you for writing that in, and please write in and tell that mom if you have experienced this and what your experience with it is. Now, I'm being told that we have Jai on Skype now. Do we want to take a brief break, Samantha, or just go right to Jai? Quick break, and so we'll be right back with Jai Lester from Calm Classroom. You're not going to want to miss it. Stick with us.
A lot of adults don't really believe kids. They'll think, kids are kids, what are they talking about? But when a child stands up for what they believe in, it's so strong and powerful. I first got involved with autism advocacy 4 years ago when my friend was diagnosed. When I found out about my friend's diagnosis, I didn't really understand what it meant. But it didn't matter to me or change our friendship. I didn't look at her any differently. We still had so much fun together. Now I know that she experiences life a little differently than me, and that's okay. Knowing what she goes through has helped me to understand and be more caring towards other people in similar situations. I got involved with ACT Today because I wanted to do whatever I could to help. They provide options like behavioral therapy, medical care, social skills programs, assistance to military families, and much more. Being there for my friend was my #1 priority. I've been volunteering and spreading the word about the cause via my social media platform because raising awareness is a crucial first step. There needs to be more kids and teens involved to make sure that our voices are heard just as loudly as the adults. You may be small like me, but your acts of kindness are not.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We're thrilled that this is a topic that I love. We're always talking about mindfulness, and we're always talking about autism in the classroom, right? And sometimes we talk about how those two things go hand in hand. And as I said to you early in the show, sometimes it's just important to go to the source, and we've been quoting a lot of research on the show about these things. And so I want to introduce to you Jai Lester from Calm Classroom. Jai, we're so thrilled to have you with us today.
I'm really glad to be here. It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
No, it's our pleasure. And I want you to start by telling the folks at home what Calm Classroom is and how it came to be.
Well, Calm Classroom is really a program that's been for the last 10 years primarily given in school settings, and it's composed of a series of mindfulness-based techniques, about 40 of them, and we train teachers to deliver these mindful practices, which are about 3 minutes in length each, to students. So we train the teachers, and then the teachers deliver it to the students. So that's what it is in a real nutshell.
And I want to make sure that people understand that, when you talk about that, we're talking about creating mindfulness for everybody in the classroom, the teachers and the students. And these could be students who are neurotypical. These could be students who are on the autism spectrum. But I eventually we're going to get to the fact that specifically talking about kids with autism. But I also want people to know that this isn't just something that you decided that was going to be helpful and that there's no research behind it. There's quite a bit of research behind the fact that mindfulness in the classroom makes a difference. And you have been a part of a lot of that research. Isn't that correct, Jai?
Well, we're actively involved in a series of research studies on the program itself. And then there's been a huge amount of research done on the ability of steady mindfulness practices to affect executive functions, the ability for children to socially interact with each other more effectively, issues in looking at things like relaxation response and dealing with toxic stress, and the issues of trauma. And specifically, our program has served both in the general public schools throughout the United States with a heavy emphasis in Chicago, but we've also, over the last 10 years, partnered with a number of really dedicated schools that serve autistic kids as well as kids who are having just serious behavioral disorders.
And so let's talk a little bit about what you see in the difference, because I was on your website and it just, I get this, and I think a lot of our viewers get this, why this is so important. But some of the statistics that you have there after doing mindfulness in the classroom, that you've had people report a 21% increase in test scores, standardized test scores, 75% drop in violence, a 10% increase in attention, a 65% of teachers report a decrease in their personal stress, and 94% percent of teachers said that they saw a difference in a positive difference in individual students and how they interacted in the classroom. Those are some pretty impressive statistics. So I want to talk specific. Go ahead.
Let me put that in perspective, though. Everything in practicing mindfulness is directly related to the steadiness and quality of the practice. So when we work in a school setting where the school is really having a lot of both emotional as well as behavioral issues show up in the school, and then they adopt a school-wide program with 100% across the school, all the teachers involved, all the students involved, and they're consistently implementing, then you get to see those kinds of really large changes like that.
So in a nutshell, you're saying in order for it to work, you got to do it and everybody has to get behind it. Is that right, Jai?
Right. It's like no magic bullet. It's a bullet of just steady practice and in an environment that everybody is motivated to be steady and practice together.
But if people are willing to do this, it works. You've had people doing this and it's making a tremendous difference.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what kinds of differences you've seen when you guys have been able to do this training in the classroom, specifically with kids on the autism spectrum. What is it that you guys have had reported back to you from those individuals or from their teachers or from their families?
Well, a lot of it depends on the way that the program is being used and implemented. Mm-hmm. And really at what point on the spectrum the particular adult or child is on the autism spectrum. So if it's more mild Asperger's or really a situation where the students may need to be in a special school, but at the same time it's really more mild, so their ability to interact socially, they're not that indrawn completely, but there's something that needs extra help. In that environment, it's very, very similar. The practices are so simple and easy to follow that that situation in a classroom setting will get very similar results to what we see in our gen ed schools from just the normal child. So that's that way. If you're in a situation where you have children with a little bit more intense issues on autism, a little bit higher on the spectrum, they may need to be working one-on-one with someone to make it work effectively. In other words, they can't do a simple mindfulness practice effectively in a group setting, but one-on-one, they can do very well with that. And so it can get a very positive result there. And the kind of results I'm talking about is that the kids become a little bit more outward, they're a little bit more present with their surroundings, they get a little bit more distance from their sensitivities. So a lot of children who have autistic issues and are on that spectrum have a great deal of sensitivity in their senses. So hearing can be very much of a problem for them, and visual cues can be a problem for them as well.
But with more one-on-one support, which kind of goes, I mean, that makes sense because that's what it would be. We see that across the board, right? If that they're able to access the curriculum with a little bit more support, it would make sense that they would be able to access your curriculum with a little bit more support.
Right. That's exactly what it is. So when you talk about results, it has to be put into context to is the child being identified correctly that they need private support for that, or are they still in a classroom setting and a teacher's trying to implement this without that kind of recognition and therefore not getting any significant result.
Okay.
So it really, that identification of what is needed is really crucial. But that's really very typical of what teachers' skills are in special needs. So that they really know how to take anything and adapt it to the situation of the children that they're working with.
Yeah, especially those really great teachers that are out there are able to do that. That's the best of the best.
And there's a lot of them.
Yes, there are.
really allowed.
And unfortunately, we don't talk about them enough. You know, it's always the headline of the one in the one bad apple. And so we do need to give a shout out to those fabulous special education educators who are amazing and can make any lesson a possibility for our kids. You're absolutely right. I want to.
Just one other thing I would touch on,
Yes.
kind of response to what you're saying, is because you have results that happen naturally for a child who's practicing, and that might be age-related child, so they could be older, but their level of age capacity is much younger for what they're learning. But then you also have the effects on the teachers who are teaching this, that it helps them immensely. And it helps them in two ways. It helps them, one, with their own issues of stress and anxiety over serving the situation of really helping manage and teach to kids who have autism. And it causes a lot of stress in the school setting, huge stress.
Yeah.
Not that all teachers aren't under stress, but sometimes it's more intense in schools that have to deal with autism and behavioral issues. So they get that benefit. And then they also, the teacher becomes more sensitive to what they're seeing in the child. So they have a kinder, a little bit softer attitude towards the child. And that is another benefit because they get their own practice in as part of this. So when they're teaching, they're practicing with the child, but they also the teachers tend to practice in groups at the schools that we work with. So they're getting that direct benefit as well.
Well, now let's talk a little bit about, because I know that there are people watching and already writing in and saying, so how do I get this in my classroom? You have several different types of training. Let's go right through what the different types are and how they can do it.
Well, I think for the independent teacher, so because not every teacher is able to have school-wide training. It's just not feasible to have staff come out and train the whole school, but they can implement in their own classroom. And they have a contained classroom, so they can make some real benefit by just being a teacher doing it. So for those teachers, they simply can go to our website, which is calmclassroom.com, and go to the store. And in there's a program called the Academy. And it's an online e-learning course which walks them through how to roll out the program, how to teach and work with the curriculum, and how to deal with some of the behavioral issues that'll come up in the classroom. And they're certainly going to need to adapt it to their special needs situations, because again, they may be teaching it, we don't know what level that their children are at, right? So, but they will have that skill to adapt what they see in our course, because we get that report all the time. Mm-hmm. And they'll make it work for them. So I think that's the easiest and economical way for a teacher to do that. And it's very, the cost for that, as an example, is about $65, and they get the training course as well as their own manual, their own curriculum manual that comes to them in the mail as well, so that they can teach right out of it in the classroom. So that's probably the most practical. The other thing that they can do is contact us. And if they're an administrator of a school, we can discuss with them what it means to bring school-wide training to all of their staff, and which we do.
Okay. I want to put it out there too, having been a room mother in a classroom, that, you know, there are certain times of the year when the expectation is to get a gift for the teacher from the class. And for those of you, no, I'm serious. For those of you who are looking for a gift to be able to give, I think there are rules about for a dollar amount from one person, because one person probably could give it, but then they might go, oh, I can't take it from one person. But what a great gift to give to a classroom teacher from a class. I can tell you as a former teacher that those kinds of things, more training, and good teachers love to learn and love to gather skills to be able to bring them back to their classroom, and one that reduces the stress and makes it possible for more things to happen for everybody. I think that's a great teacher gift.
Yeah, and the other side for the parents, right, as well, is that once their teacher who's working with their children takes on the program and has made the adaptions, and they're working with it, because they work with it with the children anywhere from 1 to 3 times a day.
Yeah.
The parent at that point can buy our manual alone, And they can, with very, very simple instructions from their teacher, from their classroom teacher, they can also work with their children, teaching the Calm Classroom practice at home with their children. And
Amazing.
that manual is $25, so that's very feasible for them.
And I'm wondering, Jai, so you've had classes that did this. I want to know, do the kids then, I'm sure they do, but I want to hear it from you. Does it generalize? Does it translate in, do they use these techniques out of the classroom? Are the kids reporting that they take it the next year to the next classroom that they go and keep on doing these 40 things?
Yeah, I just this morning was doing a kind of a year, at the beginning of our school year, we do refreshers for our partners, school partners, and I was talking to our facilitator, our partner at Cove School, which is a special education school in Chicago area. And she was just telling me a couple of stories, but one was that one of their students was transferred from their school into a full care facility. So in other words, they had been day students, but they had this year had to go to full care facility where they were living in. And this child had gotten so much out of using the Calm Classroom with their teacher that she had the teacher gave her the book so she could take it to the next school to have her new teacher use it.
How sweet.
It was really sweet, and that's what the young girl asked for. And then they are, in fact, in Cove School going to, we were just discussing, look at providing the manuals to their parents at home to work with the program with the kids who they're already working with now. I think this is their second or third, this is their third year.
A lot of times, Jai, people think that, first of all, that kids are too little to understand mindfulness, and the kids on the autism spectrum aren't going to be able to understand it and aren't going to be able to get a benefit. Is there one exercise that you could talk to us about and share with us what it is that allows us to see, oh man, that's not that hard to translate, and that with the proper support that our kids, just to give us an example, I'm putting you on the spot here and you can tell me, no, this is the secret sauce, I can't. But is there an example you could give us?
There's no secret sauce.
There's no secret. There is. I think there is.
It's just something that works.
Okay.
And if you are in the enviable position to get support in having a steady practice, because it often takes that, then you can gather that benefit. And so what I would say for children who are more on the autism spectrum, it's easier for them to notice things physically than it is more subtle things. So that's probably a key. So if you think about, say, the simple feeling of noticing your breath, which is a real typical mindfulness practice where you just simply feel your breathing, right? So you're sitting there and the lungs are moving, the diaphragm's moving, your eyes are closed, and you're focused on that physical feeling. That can be difficult and a little too subtle for some of the students. Of the students. So they might be, as again you can see, this really varies by student capacity. They might be better off having something a little bit more physical to focus their attention on and practice mindfulness with. So they might do something like a simple, what you'd call like a seated mountain position at their desk. Now, I don't know if you're going to see this in my on Skype here, but it might be that while they're breathing, they're just lifting their arms up. I don't know if you can see that so well.
I can see your arms are up.
But they're reaching up, and what they're focusing on is the feeling of the stretch in their body.
And we're showing a picture right now, Jai, of students doing that in a classroom.
Oh, well, that's interesting. So for them, that might be easier to hold focus on. And then also, if you're using things like the sound of a bell, right? Because it's strong, that can be really effective because it's an external sound to focus on. But if they have hyper issues with hearing, some of the kids will actually wear headphones, like little earphones.
Yes.
It muffles it, but they still can focus on an external sound. So it has to do with the students' capacities for being able to stay focused on external things, because their focus is primarily the more seriously state, it's more inwardly focused, deeper and deeper until their visual day-to-day images and daydreams become more real than the outside, basically. They're more
Yes.
focused there. So you're trying to pull them, in a way, back to society. And
But
so,
But interesting that, I think of mindfulness now like any other muscle in my body, that the more opportunity that I have to stretch it and use it, the better I get at it. And I imagine it's that way for everybody.
it's totally that way. Yeah, you get into a habit, and that's why regularity by the teacher, why having a teacher who holds a regular practice for you in the classroom is so valuable, because then you just don't forget to use it. Whenever you're just using it on a regular basis, both to deal with anxiety and stress,
Yeah.
but also just as something that feels really good to you.
Well, and honestly, correct me if I'm wrong, when you do these kinds of things and use it as an insurance policy, you do it before you get stressed, it takes longer for you to get stressed. And it reduces the stress out the gate. You're less likely to even get to the point of stress. But, I will be honest that yesterday on the way to school, I was so stressed you could have bounced a quarter off of my head because the traffic was not letting me get my kid there. And I was like, there was a moment where I was like, I am too stressed, and like I need to start using my tools, and I need to center myself and breathe and put this in perspective and realize that there's more going on than just this. But it took me a minute. I already got to the stress, but I did use my tools. If I used it before I got in the car, I think it would have taken longer for me to get to that point.
Right, and the children, regardless of whether they have autism, they will respond the same way. They will respond the same way, and they do. And it really depends on the child and how well you can work with them, but they do respond in the same way.
I wanted you to take a minute, Jai, and talk to us a little bit about the Luster Learning Institute.
Yes. Well, when we decided to bring mindfulness out into the world, we had to decide how we were going to do it. And we decided we would do it as a nonprofit. And we decided to focus primarily on service to children in schools, through schools, because we thought their classroom teachers could be the support they need for regularity. And we didn't see anywhere else in society that was as available to do that with. And we also believed that starting with children at a young age and then moving forward with them all the way through high school age would provide the biggest improvement in overall societal issues as well, long term. So we formed the Luster Learning Institute, and over the last 10 years, it's been a really significant contributor to raising capital and funds to allow us to keep bringing this out to schools. And most schools help pay for the program, and then our nonprofit donations help make the whole thing work on top of that. The schools usually don't have enough to support our entire operation.
Okay, and so how can people find out more information about the Luster Learning Institute and about Calm Classroom? Where do they need to go?
Well, they can go right to calmclassroom.com. That's the simplest way. And on there, you'll see the About Us tab where it talks about our nonprofit aspect as well. And there's a place there if they want to donate as well.
Okay, wonderful. And if a school is interested in getting your services and having you guys come and train them, they go to the same place. Which tab?
They can,
Okay.
or they can just call us directly, and that's at 847-748-7482.
Okay.
And they
Wonderful.
can do that as well.
And but again, if there's a single teacher that's out there that's watching that wants to be able to bring this into their self-contained classroom, what they would do is go to calmclassroom.com, go to the store, and they will see that. What do you recommend for them again?
I really recommend for a classroom teacher who says, I want to teach mindfulness in the classroom, and I just want to get a good curriculum to work with good, simple 3-minute techniques, and I want some e-learning behind it to get myself organized and context build. So because they might want to talk to parents, it'll help them with context building as well. They take the Calm Classroom Academy, and in the store they'll see the Academy place. They click there, and that's $65 for them.
I want to say, if you are a classroom, they call them room moms, but there's room dads too. If you're a parent working with the classroom and you're looking for a teacher gift to give from the classroom, I can't think of anything that could change the way a classroom teacher approaches teaching and keeping that classroom productive and stress-free, which, man, in this day and age, could we find something better or more pivotal? Because learning happens when you're relaxed, not when you're stressed.
Right. And I would say one other thing for the parents, because there may be quite a few listening.
Yes.
Is I do say again, I want to reiterate that once the child is getting this at school, you can simply get a manual yourself for $25, and then you can go ahead and do the practices that your children like the most out of it. They'll tell you what they like the most, and you can be the leader for them. You can be their teacher right at home as well.
It's amazing what you guys are doing. We absolutely love what you're doing. I thank you so much for being with us today. I know how busy you are, and I honestly, I'm so thrilled that you were here to give us this wonderful information. I want to encourage everybody to go to calmclassroom.com to find out more information. We're going to take a break, and then we're going to be back with more information. And Jai, I'm going to ask for you to stay on the call for just a minute so I can talk to you during the break. But for everybody else, stick with us. We've got more Autism Live coming up after these messages.
Thank you.
We are here at the Los Angeles Zoo. We've got quite a group here. I've got my son, Jem, Mike from the A Word, and Jack Riley, star of the A Word, and Jessica. We've got a whole crew of people, and we're going to take a tour around the LA Zoo and see some exciting animals. Sound good, you guys?
What are the safety rules, though? Who do you have to stay next to? Daddy and Dieter.
So remember what we talked about, that every time you do something good, I'm going to write it on my hand. When you get 35 of these, what are you going to get?
3 hours of reading.
Yes, it's not a secret. You can tell people. What kinds of things do you need to do to get a mark on my hand?
Being kind. And good listening. Jem, can you show him where the chimpanzees are? Can you point it out to him?
Show Jack Riley. Tell us what your responsibilities are here at the LA Zoo.
I am the manager of volunteer programs at the Greater Los Angeles Zoo Association. I oversee the docents, the student volunteers, the general volunteers, and community service volunteers.
Give us an overview of what kinds of things people can see at the zoo.
There are lots of animals to see. We have a lot of endangered. We participate in a lot of conservation programs, and we offer a lot of education programs for our community, for school groups, for members, special needs.
What kinds of accommodations can you make when somebody has specific issues?
We have our special needs outreach program, and where we have a van that goes out into the community, and we bring a handful of animals to facilities that can't quite get to the zoo. So that could be a school, that could be a retirement community, that could be a hospital, and there are some courthouses that we visit as well. And we bring a couple animals and we talk about them, and it's kind of a fun experience. So that's our outreach program. And then on grounds, we also have tours, and we offer special needs tours for people catered to their needs. We have our petting zoo, so you can go and you can pet some goats.
We're here with From Autism Live, and we were wondering if you could tell us what it's like to be a goat in the zoo. Really?
And we have our condor rescue zone, so you can go in and pretend you are a condor, or you could be a biologist, or you could be a vet. And it's kind of fun.
Thank you for all the work that you do here and for making it accessible for all of our kids. Here with Janet Jackson. Janet, tell us what your role at the zoo is.
My role is a docent, and we're volunteers.
How did you learn all the things that you know?
Well, that's the great thing about the Los Angeles Zoo. We have a special docent program. It's one of the most stringent ones in the country. Actually, it's UCLA accredited class.
Well, it added so much to our visit to the zoo today. So I thank you for all your knowledge and all your giving to the community.
Well, thank you, because I had a special needs child too, and I think it's so important that they interact with animals. And that helped my son when he was going through so much trauma, that we saw that he was able to grow and to expand a little bit. And it just helped us as parents because we had a tool to use, and we saw the love and the care that he was able to bring out just by touching animals and being around animals, because there is no judgment there.
Amen to that. Well, thank you for paying it forward, because you are. I definitely saw you doing that today. Thank you so much.
Thank you for being here.
What was hard for you guys today at the zoo, do you feel?
To be completely honest, I was about to say this is the easiest, best outing I can recall. My concerns are, I think we're sort of past elopement, but it's always on my mind when it's just with the two of us out in a, you can get 20 feet away if it's busy and be lost, be misplaced. But nothing like that happened today. There were a lot of people helping me, of course.
It was interesting for me because Jem hasn't been here since he was 3, like right after we started therapy. And I remember that was hellish, the day that we were here. Sometimes I don't notice the progress until we're out someplace like this. Do you feel like that's true too?
Yes, today I was actually comfortable with him being 15, 20 feet away. And even if he wasn't holding anybody's hand or anything, I was comfortable. And that's a new feeling.
I watched that and I said, man, there's no way we could have done that at that age. So he's doing really well. And I was so engaged by how Jack Riley is so aware of the circumstances around him. He's really doing great.
Yeah, thank you. He's curious. He's and he's just learned a lot. I mean, I can't give enough credit to Miss Jessica. No disrespect to any of our other therapists, and she's been with him for the whole time. So that's a constant in his life, and I dread the day when she's not.
It's always amazing. We had our rock star on our team. There's always one therapist that just becomes a part of your family forever. What would you say to parents who are afraid to do it even with an aide?
I understand your fear, because I've always had it. But sometimes they surprise you. I know it's called a spectrum for a reason, and my son is not like any other son or daughter, and so I can't advise you on what may or may not happen. We were always worried about transitions. They're getting better because we do it, and explain what is expected before you get here. That was a hard lesson for me to learn. But every time I don't explain to him the expectations, I have more problems. I have more transitional issues. But when he knows what transitions he's going to face that day, he handles it. So my advice would be, talk it out, but come do it, and come again, even if it's a horrible experience, because it might be. You got to do it the first time before you can do it the second time. So.
In general, I mean, I explained the expectations here and we carried it out of my hand. I agree with you. It's super duper important. I think it's good for us too, because then we know what we're expecting too.
And they've engaged each other a little bit, which I was very happy to see.
Thank you so much for coming and doing this play date with us. We had a really great time.
Well, thank you for having me. I enjoyed it, and it's just a great experience. I can't wait to tell my wife how well he did. So.
And let's do it again sometime.
Okay, anytime. Yeah.
You just saw a short video clip about the scallop, and we had these folks on the show yesterday. This is coming to you from Convade and R82. This cool little chair, and you saw they were carrying it on the beach, and it just looks like a beach bag, right? But you saw all the different ways this young child, this girl, was using her scallop to be able to be a part of everything and to be able to sit calmly in all the different ways that she needed to sit. I don't think we always realize how much energy it takes to sit still, right? And to be able to sit and focus. And all the muscles that it takes, right? And for some of our kids, especially if you have a kid with low muscle tone, you'll hear the OT say, oh, they're low tone. When we're trying to teach a kid how to write, and this is a whole lot of, muscle to be able to do, right? And it has to go from the brain down to the hand. But if you're also having to work on the core muscles too at the same time, that's asking a lot. And we see kids that are, they got this going on, and sometimes we feel like it's a focus issue, but the truth of the matter is that sometimes it's a physical issue that then becomes a focus issue. And I do think that, your OT and in your program, you need to be working on that core strength, and there's lots of things that you can do to work on that. But one of them is to train yourself the proper way to sit. Well, you got to have some support to do that. And some of the support things are, so restrictive that then you can't do the thing. This scallop is amazing because it supports our kids to be able to sit up and do the task that they have to do. It helps them to be able to focus. It kind of squeezes them, which our kids love, because as you push back on it, the sides kind of come in and kind of envelop you. And it gives them the ability, I always love to talk about that cartoon that talks about the difference between equality and justice, where it shows the three kids standing there watching the track meet, and the one kid is able to stand there and see it. It shows them standing first with nothing, and the one kid can stand there and he can see that. The next kid, he can't quite see it because there's something in his way, so he can see about half of it, and the third child isn't able to see any of it. All he's seeing is the thing that's in the way. And then they show you what justice looks like, because that's equality, when everybody gets the same, but you can't, not everybody can meet it where it is. But justice is the kid who can see it on his own is able to, but the kid who can only see half of it, they give him a little step to stand on so that he can see over the curtain. And the kid who needs a little bit more of a riser gets more of a riser so that he's able to see too. It's that equal access is what we want. We don't want equality, we want equal access. And this is something that gives a lot of our kids equal access. If you've got a kid who's having a hard time with circle time, this is an amazing thing to be able to give them. So we have the ability to give away one scallop, which I'm really excited about. We really want to thank Convade and R82 for giving us the ability to do that. You need to write you have till next Wednesday, autismlive@gmail. What we're going to do, you email us at that email and say, I want the scallop, and then give us your mailing address. And we're going to pick one lucky winner at random to receive a scallop. You'll be able to say which size you need, because they come in 4 different sizes, and the colors are reversible, which I love. It's such a clever thing. So write to us, tell us, I want the scallop, and tell us what your mailing address is. We're going to pick one lucky winner on the show a week from today at random. We're picking at random to make it fair and equal and even. Okay, I got so excited about that. I wanted to talk a little bit about, we've had a couple of questions that have come in. The first one that I want to deal with, somebody said, good morning, Shannon. I have a question for Attorney Bonnie Yates. And Bonnie's not here today, but we will definitely take this up with her, but I wanted to weigh in it because I don't want you to wait. They said, I have a child with high functioning autism in 1st grade. What are the reasons to decide a child doesn't belong in general education? And I think this is a good question. My son is not disruptive or a danger to others or to himself. I asked in his IEP for general education placement with support of an ABA trained, I'm assuming one-on-one, but they said he won't be able to benefit from general ed. My son is not able to write yet. He's verbal, but still severely speech delayed for his age. His academics are at a preschool level, Are these the reasons for not allowing him to be in general education? And thank you, and God bless you. And God bless you too. And I want to say that we will have Bonnie answer this question next week, but there's a couple of things that I want you to look into as well, because Bonnie will handle the legal side of it, but I want to handle the other side of it, which is that it's a really hard, the school is going to tell you that he doesn't benefit from being in general education for two reasons. And one of them is because your child is not yet at grade level. Well, that's not really a reason to not put them in general education, but we'll let Bonnie address that. But they're also going to tell you that he doesn't belong in general education because it's going to cost them more to have a one-on-one aid. And I'm just going to go there with you. I have a friend who says, when you can see the dollar sign over my child's head, please point it out to me and I'll take heed of it. But until that time, you have an obligation to give my child a free, appropriate public education. And by the way, the Supreme Court recently ruled that appropriate means that it has to be substantive. So, Bonnie will address the legal side of it. I don't think that they have a good case for you to not be in general education. But let's talk about the other side, which is it the placement that you want for your child? And I firmly believe that we want our children to be in the place that's best for them. And I think that for a lot of our kids, more than are given credit for, that would be in general education. But, and here's the big asterisk, if we haven't given them enough tools to be able to handle general education, then all we will be doing is frustrating them. And by the way, the tools aren't just for our kid, the tools are for their aide and for their teacher and for the other kids in the classroom. So when you've got a school who's saying, oh, he won't benefit from that, that gives me a warning sign that they're not properly training their ABA one-on-ones, because he would benefit from being in general ed. And it makes me worry that they're not going to work hard to have your child actually be included. I love Dr. Mike Dorsey, who is, I think, and many people would agree with me, the expert in placement in the United States for determining what is the proper placement for kids. He's called upon all the time by both school districts and by parents to testify about what is appropriate placement for an individual. And so his thing is that he says, most of our kids would benefit from full inclusion, but because very few people do inclusion really well, and when you're included in a program that isn't good inclusion, sometimes that's really stressful for our kids. So I guess I have some questions for you about, do you think you can work with these people? Do you think that they seem to be people who can get on board with you? And sometimes the administrators are not people that you can get on board with, but when you meet the teachers are people who will get on board with you. Now that's a good scenario, because if you can fight the administrators and the laws on your side, the laws are written in such a way, and the Supreme Court's already held you up, it's written in such a way that, if you're willing to fight and if you've got the time and the energy and sometimes the dollars, right, that's a part of it too, but often it's the time and the energy to fight for it that you might get it. But if the people in the classroom aren't open to it, I would tell you, you need to be very cautious about that. So, you're going to make your decisions about that and hear Bonnie out next week. But the ways in which that your child is not at grade level, that's really what I want to focus on, because those things are infinitely teachable, and they're ways that you can get your child caught up during this year, regardless of whichever placement you end up being in, whether it's in the special day classroom or whether it's in the gen ed, whatever you decide to push for. So no matter what you decide to do, I would be working overtime to get him to the point where in second grade that he was at grade level. And so the things that you listed here, you said that he's not able to write yet. And so, when we talk about writing, we go back to where are we left off? Because with our neurotypical developing kids, there's this whole progression that starts with the pincer grasp, right? That being able to do this and pick something up. So my question to you is, can your kid pick up, your child, I say kid, but I know sometimes that's offending to people. Can your child pick up a Cheerio or a raisin or things of that nature and hold them in their finger, right? Because that's the beginning of it. Then we want to get to a tripod grasp. And so when we get to a tripod grasp, one of the things that we can do that works on both pincer grasp and tripod grasp is, have you seen those lacing toys? That it comes with long, long laces and it comes with beads, right? And then they have cards where they have to poke the lace through, and sometimes they have to string a bead on. Well, okay, it's pincer and it's tripod and pincer grasp, because when they have to poke the lace, they have to hold it with 3 fingers, and we're strengthening those muscles. So every time they're poking the lace through and pulling it through, they're going to do it with a tripod grasp, and it builds muscles. Every time they pick up the bead to put it on the thing, they're doing that with a pincer grasp. Isn't that brilliant? So I love those toys, and if your kids have not mastered those toys, you're going to have a harder time with handwriting. And don't be afraid if your kid is older. If your kid is 12 and they don't have that yet, you can go back and do that and have them string necklaces and sell them and, you know, and make it worthwhile for them so that they're able to do that. But that's, you know, a great thing to be able to do to build those muscles. And then once you get to the point where they're holding it with some authority and stringing the beads, then you want to move on to broken crayons. And I know, you know, the big thing used to be that they would have those big fat crayons. Avoid those like the plague. That's not going to help with the tripod grasp, right? Because what kids do is they take the big fat crayons and they hold them like this. And they can get the coloring done and they're reinforced from that, but we're not going to get to handwriting that way. In fact, get regular crayons, take the peels off of them and snap them into little itty bitty pieces. And, you know, or get golf pencils too, because when a pencil is long enough, a child can hold it like this and write that way, and we're not going to get to good handwriting. So get yourself the little crayons, or the little pencils, or snap the crayons in half. What we used to do, we would get a box of crayons and we would sit there and pick all of make him do it with us too, and he enjoyed it. If you have kids that like the picking thing, they'll peel the paper off, and that can be very fun. And then we broke them into little pieces and we put them on the table, and we had a little sewing box that we kept them in, a little plastic sewing box that had little divisions in it, like a button box, and he would have to sort the colors to put them together. So all the reds would go together. So we're working on red, well, you know, working on so many different skills at the same time, right? But then we would open the box up when it was time to color and say, you know, pick from the reds, and there's many different reds there, which is great for generalization for colors. But so he would pick the red that he'd want to do, and you can't hold it like this when it's small. So they're forced to hold it with a tripod grasp and have them color and reinforce, 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 reinforce. As you're getting to letters, they sell, you can find them online, they're called Wiki Sticks. And, or there's something called Bendaroos that you can get like at a Toys R Us. And they look almost like the shape of pipe cleaners, but they're not fuzzy like a pipe cleaner. They're sticky. It's almost like a candle wick. And what you do is you can shape them into different shapes. So you can make your own stencils. And so, you know, it's fun to begin with their own name, but you make the stencil of their name. So all they have to do is stick the pen or the crayon or the pencil or whatever it is that's small, so you're getting the tripod grasp, in the space between the Wiki stick, because you've made a stencil, and they draw their name. So they're starting to get the muscle memory of the drawing, and it already is keeping them in the lines. Because a lot of places will start you with handwriting and they'll put a sheet down and the child has to draw on the line. Well, our kids need the step before that. So you make this shape of the letter, or you just do a straight line or do a squiggly line, and they stick the pencil in, and there's no way they can off-road, right? But you're building the muscle and the hand-eye coordination. And then you go to the sheets, and from there, I really recommend Handwriting Without Tears. I think it's a great thing for our kids. But also, before I forget, let me also say, if your child isn't handwriting, Make sure that you have an appointment with, eventually you're going to need to see a developmental, I can never remember whether it's optometrist or ophthalmologist, but it only applies to one of them. So if you call and say, I'm looking for a developmental optometrist, and they say, oh, no, that doesn't exist, it's the other one, but it's the developmental before it, because you want to make sure that their eyes are able to track, because if they have trouble with handwriting, it's very likely that there could be an issue with being able to track, and they'll have some eye exercises for you as well, and that will make a huge difference. And also, one of the things that CARD has discovered is that handwriting, if that's a difficulty because of eye issues, that a great thing to do is work on catching a ball. And I love the O balls that have so many holes in them that, you know, a lot of times they go to catch, and because the eye thing isn't there, they can't quite catch. But the O ball will hook itself on their fingers. There are also ribbed balls that, same thing, there's more for them to catch on to. So lots of things that I just gave you. And as far as the speaking, you know, that will come with time. I'm sure you're getting lots and lots of speech therapy, and that you're rewarding all kinds of speech. They will catch up. But the handwriting thing is going to be a big deal to get them included in neurotypical second grade and have it be meaningful for them. But we'll have Bonnie take on the legal side of it next week, and there we go. Hopefully that was of some help to you. I've got another question that I'm going to deal with in just a little while, but first I want to get to, because we don't have a whole lot of time, we're going to take a break and come back with my talk on how do you make a child with an autism spectrum disorder happy. So stick with us.
Is the Act Today, One Hope Act Today for Military Families Run and Festival, and it's to benefit military families challenged by autism. So we're out here for a great day. Not only is there a 10K run, a 5K run, and a 1 mile fun run, there's a kids run and there's an Easter egg hunt. Military families are particularly hard hit because they have very special circumstances.
I have 3 kids in my family. You know, my nephew has 3 children that are all on the spectrum. And for me, it originally became about understanding and learning about autism. And then it became about, you know, what can I do to help? It takes $3 million to raise a child through their lifetime with autism. That's a great reason to get involved.
On your mark, get set. One Hope Wine is the 7th annual title sponsor of the One Hope Act Today for military families, because we believe that giving back is good business. Of-age runners are probably going to meander over to the One Hope and Stone Beer and Wine Garden for a celebratory glass. For the younger generation, the Family Fun Zone.
This is a big thing for us because it's about getting more treatment to more people, raising awareness. It's a really good event. We're proud to be a part of it for 7 years now, and we're a local office, so we wanted to be here.
Stroller Warriors is a free running club for military spouses and their families. A lot of us are impacted by autism, so it's just a great way for us to get together and raise some money and bring attention to this important cause.
I think people forget the people element involved with autism. You know, the families that are suffering, the children that are suffering.
Society could be robbed of so much untapped potential, talent, and skills if we're not helping the children of these military families as much as any other children out there. Not just those suffering with autism, but those struggling.
People should get together and tell their friends and family to donate to ACT Today. It's a really important cause, one that's close to our heart and the San Diego community as a whole, and an incredible opportunity to support the military. So get out there and donate.
Welcome back. I decided there were 2 more questions that I wanted to answer really quickly before we do the how to make a child with ASD happy. So Susie wrote into us and said, what kind and what does genetic testing help with a child with autism? There are a couple of different things, and so it really depends. And I don't know that there's anybody that's offering the full width of everything, but ask when you're going for genetic testing about a couple of different things. First of all, we want to make sure when we're getting our kids tested that they don't have Fragile X. Because if your child has Fragile X, there are very specific health issues that your child is going to have that are going to need to be addressed, and having that information earlier as opposed to later is going to be very beneficial to your child. So that's the first thing that you want to eliminate when everybody who has a child with autism should find out if your child has Fragile X. Big differences that can be made, and there's medicines that can be given to help prevent other health issues down the road. Then there are a whole array where they look at gene deletions, and every couple of months they add more to them. And they're seeing that, first of all, one of the things that you can find out from gene deletions, that there are more and more health problems associated because they're starting to phenotype, right? Which means that the more people who do genetic testing and they say, oh, well, here's another person who has this gene deletion, and they look at all the health problems that they have across their life, then that filters down. So the science is really minute by minute at this point. Sometimes when you find out that you have a certain gene deletion, it can help you to decide what to do about therapy and how to invest in therapy, because if you know, okay, we're going to have these kinds of issues, you need to spend more time with an OT. Or we don't have this, so we don't have to spend as much time on OT, and we want to spend more time on these other therapies. It can really help to direct your dollars in different ways. It can also help to provide you with support, so that certain parents who have found out that their child has a specific gene deletion have been able to join support groups that are just for that gene deletion, and it helps them to get access to more resources and find out from more families, okay, so this is going on, how did you deal with this, right? In a lot of cases, can I be honest with you, people get it back, and it's stuff that it's not part of anything that we know could be a benefit to them right now. And so that's hard, and it makes a lot of people go, oh, do I really want to spend the money to go out and deal with this? But for the families that have done it and found out that they have one of those gene variances, it's been huge. And I think it's important, if you can afford it or if your insurance will pay for it, to be able to cross those off your list and say, I know we're not dealing with that. It's not as... it's not as exciting, I guess, but the truth of the matter is that, it will help you down the road. And when they do come out with more information about other things that they see genetic-wise, you'll be a part of that. And you'll be a part of helping to get to that. I will say that there's one other test that a lot of people in the autism community have been talking about, and the benefits of it, that you won't find in most gene testing unless you specifically ask for it, which is the MTHFR. We've done a couple of different shows on it, talking about it. I think one of them is titled What the MTHFR, because look it up. There are 2 different gene variances, and if you have both of them, a change in diet can change a lot. We've had a lot of families who have seen that the mom is MTHFR, the child is MTHFR, and by removing one whole class of foods that have folic acid in them and replacing it with a folate instead, has made a tremendous difference in health and ability to focus. So, that's another thing to be looked at. But check out some of the research that's on that, and watch some of the shows that we have done about MTHFR. I'm not an expert, so don't confuse me with that. Now, another person wrote in and said, Creve wrote in and said, when can we do for people with autism to inclusion in church? What can we do for people with autism for inclusion in church? And do you think inclusion can happen for all kids over the autism spectrum? Well, I mean, it depends on what of course, I believe that they all need to be included, but I think it needs to be on their terms, not ours, not the neurotypical world's. But I think they all have a right to inclusion. And now, if you ask me if it's what's best for all of them, we just sort of addressed that. I think in some cases it's not what's best for the individual child at that moment. That sometimes being in a group of people where, like I'm thinking in a church where there's a lot of noise that comes, and it's a lot of hard surfaces, and it's a very high ceiling, that's hard for me sensory-wise. I have to be honest with you. And so I have to want to be there with the group of people. And if I don't have enough language to understand what's going on, it wouldn't be my favorite place to be. But there are other ways to include a person in church. And I think if you've got a church that is not already doing this, you can start a special needs ministry at your church and say, we need to be catering to people of all abilities. Nancy Allspaw Jackson, who hosts Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy with me, she has a special needs ministry at her church that she started and has in some ways passed off to other people, that she's still involved in it, but not as heavily involved in it. Since her husband died, she needed to take a little bit of time from it, but it's strong and going. And they have monthly dinners, and they get together, and people from the whole church come to volunteer to be with all the individuals that of all the very different needs. And she has said how much more inclusive the church has become as a result. And there are lots of churches that have special needs ministries and have found lots of clever ways to make it possible on both sides for the people in the general population of the church to have more information and to feel the love of why they need to be inclusive and be patient with differences that they will experience in order to have people included, but also to help the folks who are included to feel welcome on the other side. So I encourage you definitely to try that. We did a program a while back because there were a group of people that were working to make their synagogues more inclusive. Definitely needs to happen, and it's always person-driven. It's one person who stands up and says, and you go to somebody in authority at your church and say, I want more of this, and I'd like to be a part of it, and what can I do? Can I start a special needs ministry? And usually I think that is met with, of course, because it's all the lambs, right? Isn't that the phrase? In any case. All right, we're going to take a short break, and then we're coming back, I swear, with how to make a child with autism or on the autism spectrum happy. Stick with us.
Are those your eyes? Is that your smile? I've been looking at you forever, yet I never saw you before. Are these your hands?
As a celebrity, whatever that means, you want to do what you can to give back. The way I've always looked at it, if I'm available, I'm going to be there. And when you get there and you see what folks are doing and the lives that they're touching, how can you not want to continue to be a part of it?
And for the first time, I am looking in your eyes.
What can we all do to make a difference? Not only with trying to find a cure, but to help the children and the families that may not have the resources for these kids.
When you're looking back at me, now I understand what...
None of us are doing enough, but I think that we're doing as much as we possibly can. Because we all live in society, and the more we can all do to help society, the more it helps all of us.
And for the first time, I am looking in your eyes. And for the first time, I'm seeing who you are. I can't believe how much I see when you're looking back at me. Now I understand what love is. Love is for the first time.
Oh, I love me some Brian McKnight, don't you? In any case, we've been promising the whole show we're going to talk about how to make a child with ASD happy. And I want to say, first of all, that I was asked to give a talk this last Saturday, and this was the topic that I was asked to speak on. And I said, first and foremost, this assumes that I know or that anybody knows, right? But I think, you know, sometimes in the figuring out when you don't know, you go through a criteria of things and go, well, here's how we might figure it out. So keep that in mind. It's not like I feel like I have the answers to everything, but here are some things for all of us to think about. And is there anything more important to think about, excuse me, than getting our kids to be happy? Okay. And now I've got a tickle. But first of all, let's start with talking about what makes any kid happy. What are the things that make kids happy? Excuse me. I got a tickle. Excuse me. Okay. Let's see if I can work through it. It's not going to happen. Sorry. Okay. Now, what makes kids happy? What makes any kid happy? What makes you happy? What are the things that make anyone happy? And I think what it comes down to is it's individual, right? There's no one thing that we could say, oh, well, Legos make all kids happy. Well, they make a lot of kids happy, but they don't make all kids happy. So it's kind of individual for all of us. So of course it's individual for kids that are on the autism spectrum. So we want to think about starting with what they like. What are the things that they gravitate towards? On the show here, we talk about taking a preference assessment and taking it again and again and again. That we can do this with small children. We can do this with anyone, right? That we say to somebody who's fully verbal, what do you want, right? But for somebody who doesn't have the ability to convey, maybe we put things in front of them. For a baby, we put 3 little stuffed animals in front of them and we see which one do they gravitate towards. Oh, okay, they picked the pink elephant. But we don't just go with that. Then we take the pink elephant and we mix it up so that it's not in the same place, because maybe it's things that are in this side that they go to, right? And keep in mind always that I could say to you, would you like a piece of chocolate cake right now? And you might go, why, yes, I would love a piece of chocolate cake. So you have the chocolate cake, and then I come back to you and say, would you like another piece of chocolate cake? Well, no. I've had chocolate cake now, and I'd like to move on to something else. Maybe I need a glass of milk now, right? So your preferences change minute by minute. But I think it's super important to find out, you know, what are our kids drawn to? What do they focus on? A lot of times our kids will have obsessions, and people will say, oh, you know, don't do that. Don't feed into the obsessions. And I think we can, just with a little bit of structure. So we want to be able to feed their what they love. We want to grow it and we want to expand it. So for instance, I put a couple of different examples on the slide here. If we have kids who like trains, let's say that they like a toy train, and so they've got a toy train, great. Then we buy them a book about trains, and then maybe we take them for a ride on a real train so that we don't stay focused on one particular kind of train, right? And we move it into real life. And that might take 2 years. We're not talking about overnight, but this is what I mean by, take whatever their obsession is, grow it, and then expand it and get it as close to real life as you can over a period of time. The picture there, by the way, on that slide is of my son sitting at NASA. That he's at the console when you watch the movie Apollo 13, and you're seeing that what happened during the actual Apollo 13. That's the actual console that he's sitting at, because my kid was into rockets when he was little. So we fed that, we expanded it. Eventually, we took him to JPL here locally, and then we went to Houston and went to NASA. Those are the kinds of things that our kids don't forget. So he's not into toy rockets anymore, but he's into NASA. And now he's moved on to what are the computers that make NASA work, right? But you grow it, expand it, and that makes him happy. So take whatever they love. Temple Grandin, always says, find what they're interested in, find their currency, grow it, but build it into other things for them. And then the joke always here on the show is whatever it is that you do, reinforce, 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 right? And that's going to come up again and again in this topic, because we want to be able to take something that our kids like, and we want to build on that. Let's start with praise. Praise is hard because we're not a society that's built around praise, but we should be. And praise does change everything. So if your child loves mashed potatoes, right? And they, they eat their mashed potatoes, give them the mashed potatoes and praise them and go, yay, right? So you're linking praise to the thing that they love. And then when you get to the point where you want them to do something, right? And you say, oh, I need you to tie your shoelaces, right? And they tie their shoelaces. And if you tie your shoelaces, I'm going to give you mashed potatoes, and you praise them for it, right? Eventually, you don't want to have to give them mashed potatoes. And it's a terrible example, mashed potatoes, but you know what I mean. Eventually, you don't have to give them the mashed potatoes, because if over and over and over again, you link the thing that they love, which we're saying for this purpose is the mashed potatoes, because that was the first thing I could think of. We're linking that to praise. Eventually, you no longer need to give the mashed potatoes because your kids find praise to be reinforcing. So always link praise to it no matter what, and praise with meaningful reinforcers. It has to be meaningful to them. It can't just be something that's meaningful to you. If you say to a 12-month-old baby, I'll pay you to do it, currency has no currency for them, right? For older kids, it's everything. But you have to know what's meaningful to them. That goes back to the preference assessment. Link that with praise and give it freely, and attach it to things that they do that they love. If you get reinforced for the thing that you love, you want to do more and more of it, and it makes you happy. We've heard Dr. Grampiche talk about when her husband was younger, he went to the golf course because he got praised and he got reinforcers for it. And he is an adult who golfs and he loves it. This is how you build passion and have your kids be happy. Okay, moving on. We, as parents and as caregivers, need to listen with all of our senses to begin to know what are the signs of the fact that our children are happy. I love people who are kind of just, their faces never change and their voices are sometimes monotone, and they'll say, oh, that's so wonderful, right? I remember meeting somebody once that was like that, and I said, are you serious? Do you really love that? And they were like, it's fabulous. It's the best thing I've ever seen. But see, then I knew that about her. Then I knew that that's the voice that she makes when she really loves something. So you've got to know what the signs are of happiness in your child. My son, when he was very little, he made noises. He had vocal stereotypy, and he would make these very high-pitched R2-D2 noises when he was happy. And I know that sometimes now, he makes that now in his head and very, very infrequently makes those noises, but he'll get very quiet sometimes when he's really into something. And it can be mistaken for indifference. But I know what the signs are now. There was a time when I didn't, and I know, okay, he's absorbing. And then when the thing is over, he'll talk like a motor mouth for 3 hours, but he'll say nothing. When we were at NASA, we walked through the whole thing, and he looked and was very, Mr. Together and never said much. And I think the guy who gave us the tour was like, I don't think this kid is really into it. Oh my gosh, he talked nonstop for 3 hours after we left. It was amazing. But you got to know, and you got to listen with all your senses to know what makes your kid really happy. Another thing that we can do to make them happy, we had Joanne Laura on the show yesterday. Give them a job. Give them a job, give them something to do, and then it gives you a reason to praise, right? Having a job means you're a valued part of things. It gives you an opportunity to do instead of sit and descend into anxiety. It's really hard to be anxious while you're fulfilling a task, and it gives them the self-worth that we can't teach self-worth, but it can be experienced. So giving them a job, and it can be as simple as putting your toys away. It can be, your job is to set the table, or your job is to make your bed, or your job is to do your homework, right? But give them a job, and then what do you need to do? You need to reinforce. Praise and give meaningful reinforcers for them doing their job. And when we do that, then that makes them happy. A lot of times people think, oh, I don't want to put a demand on them. Well, put the right demand on first and work up to harder demands. But we all like it when we do something difficult and we get praised for it, right? Our kids aren't different than that. So definitely do that. And of course, my slide thing froze. There we go. Okay. We said to listen with all of our senses. We need to communicate with all of our senses too. Remember that there's more than one way. You can praise, you can hug, you can tickle, you can make faces, you can make noises. And we always, no matter what their receptive language ability, want to be languaging our good feelings about our kids. So often we forget to do that when our kids are nonverbal and we don't really know what their receptive language is. Assume that eventually they'll figure it out, and assume that your body is going to be communicating it too, and say to them, I'm so proud of you, and you're amazing, and you're the best kid ever, and I love you so much, and you're so fabulous. Say all the things and just keep piling it on. But do remember on our next slide here that it's important to know what your kids' love language is. How do they experience being loved? Do they experience it when you tell them? And that's some of our kids. Do they experience it when you hug them, when you give them a toy, when you do something for them, when you look at them? It's really important. We all have a love language, and it's really important that you start by knowing what your love language is and then finding out what your child's love language is. Because this is where a lot of misses and unhappiness in life are, is that I might be someone who feels love when somebody does something for me, right? So I'll go around and do things for people and think, oh, well, they feel loved because I did something for them, but they're people who need to be told. And so they're not getting anything. And I want, what's reinforcing is for them to feel loved. So I'm not getting anything and I'm wasting all of this energy, right? But you can also, here's the other part of it, is when you know what your love language is, you can teach your child what your love language is. And there are ways to teach them that this is the way that they can make you feel loved. That not too long ago, I was able to say to my son, when you tell me, thanks, Mom, I really appreciated when you did X, Y, and Z for me. Man, it lights up my world like a Christmas tree. And he was like, really? And I said to him, yeah. And you know what? When you do that, it just makes me want to give you everything you want. So he was like, really? And, you could see him like mentally taking a note. Oh, so now suddenly, when I put down a plate of food in front of him, or, I put his socks in his drawer, he's like, thanks, Mom. It's so nice that you do that for me. And I go, really? Oh, thanks. What do you want to do this afternoon, right? What would make you happy this afternoon, right? And so we're feeding on each other's love languages. When he was littler, that would have been a hard discussion to have, right? But if when he did it, I had known to praise him and say, oh, that means so much to me, and conveyed that with all of my body and all of my language, he would have gotten it sooner. You see what I'm saying? So know what your love language is, know what their love language is. Praise, 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 right? Okay, the next tip is teach them how to play. We talk about this all the time, and I'll let you know, we're already working on the Festival of Toys here on the show, that it's so important that we have leisure skills because that reduces anxiety and it helps us to be a part of flexible, a part of society. It helps us to be able to do all the things that we want to do. But we have to not assume that our kids enjoy play, right? For a lot of them, it's work. I always like to use the example of Angry Birds. Oh my gosh, everybody was playing Angry Birds, and I looked at it and I was like, ugh, this looks like work to me. I don't really want to do it. It's not fun. And they're like, what are you talking about? It's so much fun. And it felt like work to me. Well, that's what it is for a lot of our kids. You set a Fisher-Price toy in front of them and they're like, that looks like work to me. But you can teach them how to use it. I was taught how to play Angry Birds, and then I went, oh, I get it. This is why it's so reinforcing to people, right? And when we teach the child how to play with and interact with the toy, then they like it. But while we're teaching them how to play it, we can't assume that it's reinforcing then, so we have to reinforce play. Reinforce, 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 right? We keep coming back to that because that is key to everything. And remember to link the praise to it so that praise is always going to be there. And our next tip here is that we have got to laugh and have fun and be silly and, tell jokes, play games, be ridiculous, do a craft with your kids, make up stories, use things in a way that they weren't intended for. So, or just be ridiculous, because these things teach flexibility, they reduce stress, they help your kids to be connected to you and to be connected to society, to be able to connect to other people. They increase coping skills and they improve communication. And it requires you to step out of the mold that you're in, right? But it's a fun thing to be able to do. And your kids, the bond that you'll have with your kids will be so much better, and to hear them laugh is a great thing. But I'll tell you, the single biggest thing is our next slide here. The biggest thing to do to be able to get to have a happy child is to model happiness. And I think this is where a lot of us forget, because we get so caught up in autism and resources and what does my child have and what am I doing and did we get this and did the insurance papers get in, that we've lost touch with happiness sometimes too. So we have to get excited. We have to do leisure activities and model it for them. We have to remember the hobbies that we did before our kids were diagnosed with autism. And I know I sound like a heretic right now, right? Because no, Shannon, we're busy and you tell us to take action. I do, but you've also got to feed yourself and your happiness so that your child knows what happiness looks like, because happy child only comes from happy parent. So absolutely essential that you get on the happiness train. And sometimes, you got to act it before you can be it. So sometimes, you plan something, you go, okay, we're going to do this family outing that we used to love. And, it's something that really makes me happy, but then it's the morning of and you're like, man, I just would really rather sit at home and watch TV. I totally get that. But so you motor yourself through it to do it. And then you get there and usually, something happens as a result that you go, oh, right, this is why we used to do this. It's not all going to be hearts and flowers, right? Some of it's a drag, but, motor yourself through it so that you can set the example for your kids. Sometimes they're not feeling it, but they get to the party and maybe, things get better. Okay, but it all comes down to how do you define happiness? And we've got a bunch of different definitions here. Happiness is the state of being happy. The struggle to find happiness in their life is the example that they give. That's right out of Merriam-Webster. A happy person is someone who experiences frequent positive emotions such as joy, interest, and pride. And the infrequent, though not absent, negative emotions such as sadness, anxiety, and anger. Because you can't be happy all the time. But look at the synonyms: pleasure, contentment, satisfaction, cheerfulness, merriment, gaiety, joy, feeling good, delight, good spirits, lightheartedness, well-being, enjoyment. These are all a part of being happy, and we need to possess that. But then my last parting words, because we're running out of time, is that I think the single biggest thing is that we must love them, see them, and accept them. And that is what makes our kids happy. Remember, we're on a journey, right? And we have places to go, and it's urgent that we get there. But joy only happens in the present. And we need to be with our kids in this present, in this moment. We need to love them for who they are and how they are exactly right now. And we need to see them clearly and know that they are of value and accept them exactly as they are. We are not perfect human beings. No one is perfect. We are all on a trajectory. Accepting and loving someone for exactly who and how they are in this moment in time does not mean that we're saying you're done or that there isn't anything to be worked on, ever. But it is essential. And when you come from that kind of love, anything is possible. Anything is possible. So love your kid, hug your kid, tell them that you love them and that you love them exactly the way they are. And you know, if you're not there right now, know that you can get there and you will get there. And that it's imperative that you do, because your child is amazing. And you will feel that happiness well, and then you can give it to them. I thank you so much for being with us today. I hope that you'll check out the resources that we gave you. We will have Bonnie Yates back next week. And by the way, we will have Dr. Doreen Graham-Piché back next week. And so that's going to be a really fun thing. We've got a bunch of events that we're going to be covering in the next coming months that are autism related. So make sure that you're staying tuned to our Facebook Live, to our Twitter Live, and to our Periscope Live, as well as on YouTube and the other formats that we podcast on with iTunes, Roku, Stitcher, and all of the above, right? We're free in all the places that we are, but we don't have a big marketing budget. So please tell everyone you know about us. Let them know that this is a place where they can come and ask questions and get information. That's really what we're about. I want to thank you. We're going to be back next Wednesday, and when we are back, we will have Dr. Doreen Graham-Piché for you. So you're not going to want to miss that. You can be writing your questions for her and for Bonnie Yates as well, and do that right now. Don't forget, before I forget, to write into us to win the free scallop. All you have to do is write to autismlive@gmail.com and say, I want the scallop, and give us your mailing address. We are going to pick a lucky winner of one scallop, and that will happen on the show a week from today. autismlive@gmail.com. Check out the scallop. It is a wonderful, wonderful invention. And by the way, if you just want to go ahead and get one, 844-US Mobility. That's 844-876-6245. We're out of time. I will see you next Wednesday. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Bye-bye for now.